Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. I know it's obvious to what's going on in the political matrix, but this needs to be thoroughly broken down. Republicans are kinda in cruise control, awaiting the presidential debate and election, while Democrats have been showing the nation and the world who they truly are. Harris is a far-left liberal, and she chose an even further left liberal as her vice president, which doesn't make sense, because she isn't officially the presidential nominee. But hey, what do you expect with corrupt politicians? Someone so far left, they're actually not even detected on the damn political landscape. Tim Walz is a maniac. Or he's pretending to be a maniac, which kind of makes him a maniac anyway. Many focus on the protests/riots after the George Floyd case, but I want to focus on his views on gender and what executive orders he signed. Quote, Governor Tim Walz signed an executive order protecting the rights of LGBTQ people from Minnesota and other states to receive gender-affirming health care as he slammed the tide of other states rolling back transgender rights. We want every Minnesotan to grow up feeling safe, valued, protected, celebrated, and free to exist as their authentic versions of themselves, Walz said. Protecting and supporting access to gender-affirming healthcare is essential to being a welcoming and supportive state. Advocates for LGBTQ rights say Republican-led states across the country are trying to erase the legal existence of people who are trans and to restrict the expression of those who are non-binary, gender fluid, or who perform in drag. Okay, wait, it's getting weird, as Walz would say. Erase the legal existence of people who are trans. What exactly does this mean? Do you mean Republicans are trying to exterminate trans people? What do you mean by legal existence of people who are trans? It's a bunch of non-binary blabbering. If you claim they're trying to erase the legal existence of trans people, then you are saying they're trying to make their existence illegal, right? The reason this sounds off is because there's something being hidden within that claim. And we'll get to it. According to the Human Rights Campaign, more than 150 bills targeting trans rights have been introduced in other states. Walz singled out neighboring South Dakota, where Governor Kristi Noem signed a ban on gender-affirming care for minors. Quote, I don't know what group of people in Pierre who decide to make life miserable and more dangerous for people are thinking, but it's not going to happen in Minnesota. Walz said to applause from a room full of LGBTQ activists and their supporters. Walz's executive order parallels legislation awaiting a floor vote in the State House to make Minnesota a trans refuge state by protecting trans people, families, and care providers from a range of legal repercussions for traveling to Minnesota for gender-affirming care, which includes a wide range of social and medical interventions. Unquote. Now, before we unpack all that pseudoscientific mumbo-jumbo, let's define gender-affirming care, shall we? Gender-affirming care is a range of interventions to support and affirm transgender people's gender identity. Wait. Interventions to support and affirm transgender people's gender identity. What person needs to be affirmed about their gender identity? I mean, seriously, who has a problem identifying their gender? Let's be very clear here. I'm not asking who has a problem dealing with their gender identity, such as common struggles that young adults face, such as confidence, insecurities with the opposite sex, I'm asking who has a problem identifying, yes, keyword, identifying their identity. An adult knows what gender they are. A young adult knows what gender they are. Teenagers know they are. The only human being is, in fact, children. Most children are naturally, you see, now I have to explain in favor of these wackos, but bear with me. Most children who identify with their gender are taught that's the gender they are. Yeah, that falls right in line with the whole, the doctor assigned it to them at birth. Or the parents told them they were a boy or girl. Yeah, it's a slick tactic, but it's not slick enough. You need more WD-40. Now, as you all should know by now, I'm not going to tightrope in my analysis. Children are the target. It's simple. But let's elaborate. A 24-year-old male is not even relevant to the issue, but I mention that age because they should be role models for younger males. But they instead distort everything. A 14-year-old male knows that they are a male, therefore, they don't have a problem identifying that they are male. A 4-year-old male may not be aware that they are male and surely wouldn't understand what a male is until they are taught. So the 4-year-old male can't possibly identify their gender by their own awareness until they are taught what gender is. Now, how can this 4-year-old male determine they want to change their gender and have a fucking governor pass laws to, let me slow down. Speaking of tightroping, if you ever noticed when it comes to children, these wackos avoid focusing on children in regards to gender-affirming care. They want you to believe it's mainly teenagers and young adults. But once again, they know what gender they are or sex. Within all of the pseudo-garbage you will endure with debating someone on the left about this issue, you will never get them to acknowledge science when it comes to biology. But use the same science to define the very things they are debating about. I know, how is that possible? Don't worry, we're still on Walls's tail. But these spoiled liberals go out and protest for women's rights, for abortions and all, but they allow males to invade their spaces, which are supposed to be for women, by the way. They allow males to infiltrate the female species and disguise themselves as one of them. Let's be real here, that's exactly what's happening, an infiltration of the female species. But everyone is inclusive. We allow males with burly beards, chest hairs, a penis, and testicles to be a part of our species. And we even dress them up, grow their hair out longer, slap some lipstick on. And what do you know? We see nothing but women. If that's a woman, then what the hell is a woman? What is a man? Oh, that's right, everything can be fluid. Oh yeah, that's right. Doesn't matter if there are men who can, quote, transition easier than others due to their feminine features, they are still biologically men. You are covering up the truth with an illusion, because biology is the truth. But they disregard science when it comes to biology. Isn't this classified as being intellectually dishonest? Last time I checked, that was the case. Heck, it's just being dishonest altogether. This is what Tim Walz promotes as a governor of Minnesota. Disgusting. In April of last year, he signed a bill allowing the state to basically gain custody of children if the parents didn't do what they asked them to do. Yep, that's literally what this wacko is doing. Quote, Vice President Kamala Harris's newly announced running mate, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, signed a bill in April of 2023 allowing the state to make custody determinations if a child is denied access to sex change procedures. The Trans Refuge Bill allows for temporary emergency jurisdiction if a parent denies their child sex change procedures, according to the bill's text. The bill defines the interventions, which include sex changes, hormone replacement, and cosmetic surgeries, as medically necessary so long as it respects the gender identity of the patient as experienced and defined by the child, unquote. Did I just read what I think I read? Give me a second, my friends. It'll take me a moment to process this. Wow, this is...
I know. That's out of this world. That is the characteristics of a dictator. But Democrats can just sign this into law and get away with it. Meanwhile, Democrats claim that Republicans are taking rights away from women in regards to abortion. Yet these same Democrats see nothing wrong with a governor acting like a dictator, snatching children away from parents who don't agree with their wacky ideology. And then think about that deeper. What scenario are they referring to, where a child somehow spoke to someone other than their parents about wanting to change their sex? It would more than likely be in school. So where did the thought even come from with this child that they made a conscious decision to acknowledge their sex, to change it? See, they're actually revealing what they're doing. They give the boy a pink crayon, make him participate in class experiments where he is being told he isn't a boy, he's, quote, fluid. And then the boy comes home and tells his parents, well, he's fluid. The parents freak out, demand answers from the school, and the wacko perverted governor in Walz enforces tyrannical laws to have that child taken from the parents because they refuse to embrace the distortion the school brainwashed their child with. And if I'm not mistaken, they even threaten those parents with criminal charges, child neglect, or abuse. And this is not something that's deep in the vault of Tim Walz's political career. This was just around the corner, in his time as Minnesota's governor. Kamala Harris knew about this and still chose him as her vice president. Now let me ask this question. Since Kamala Harris is identifying as a black woman, and black women are backing her, as she somehow represents the black community, how many black women have their children coming home identifying as fluid? Perhaps in wacky San Francisco, but throughout the country, they definitely don't support that. The children are the future, as the saying goes. Yet if those children are being targeted by sick individuals who have political influence and even authority, why would you vote for these type of people? You have to pump the brakes and step away from that vehicle because it's about to blow up. But not only does Harris embrace a sick man who holds those views and policies, but Harris herself aligns with that. Do you see what type of administration that would be? Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin would laugh at how ridiculous America has become, but they would also see an extreme weakness to attack. While everyone in the Democratic Party is running around in their distorted and sick reality, foreign adversaries are keeping an eye on this election. Speaking of China, I sense an interloper in Tim Walz. It's reported that he spent a lot of time in China. A lot of time. So he obviously can be considered a, asset for China. Here we go again, the element of treason. He's the real threat. Harris is just there to smile in everyone's face. But Tim Walz is the one who will do the most damage because of his liberal hawkish ambitions. And we have to magnify the point here. Tim Walz signed an executive order to basically kidnap children from parents, to mold them in the far left's gender-fluid army. It's not about the transgender community. Oh no, we won't let them get away with conflating the issue. Children, although they may say one thing, they don't know what they're actually saying. Their brains haven't developed. You know what? Don't even have to explain it. But then again, it's like you do have to explain. Again, going back to the hypocrisy of science. Here's the scenario. Is it a scientific fact that a child does not have a fully developed brain?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Is it a scientific fact that a child's brain can't distinguish what gender and sex are until it is taught to them?
Well, it's more complex than that in scientific studies.
Wait, can you answer my question? Can a child distinguish what gender and sex are until it's taught to them? It's a yes or no question.
You're making everything so convoluted. There are many complexities to the development of a child's brain function and activity. I agree with what you're saying, but you disregard many other aspects.
It's a process, yes, but okay, so you admit that a child can't distinguish what gender and sex is until they are taught. So this means someone taught them not only what gender and sex they are based on science, being biology, but this also means someone else came behind that teaching and taught them something contrary to that. Would you just admit that?
Well, if a parent teaches the child about gender, could you agree that this would be indoctrination? Maybe the parents are wrong about the child's gender, right? Why should they force their perception of gender onto the child? That's wrong. Doctors do the same thing. They have no right to assign a sex to the child at birth. Come on. They're forcing them to live a life they want them to live.
Well, first of all, the parents have the right to teach their child because it's their child. Second, the doctor doesn't assign a sex to the child at birth. They just enter that information in the database for medical records. Like the birth certificate.
Oh, really? Here's a question for you. What is a male and what is a female? If we're going based on biology, what about people born with both male and female bodies?
Nope, you're not going to use that as your deflector. Based on biology, which is science, which you use for everything else, but somehow are not willing to agree with in this case, a male and female are distinguished by their biological design, which makes them identifiable. If you include individuals who do not identify as male or female, then what this causes is a social disorder that can result in grave calamity. Here's why. A male identifies as a female, participates in a female sport. That one male who identifies as a female has just taken a spot away from an actual female in that sport or on that team. You see? You see how simple that was? You see how that causes calamity for women and their rights? That's just a small sample size, but it applies to every aspect of women activity. And that's not even addressing children and how young girls are forced to compete with boys.
Oh yeah, right. You point out such a small percentage to justify your views. Most parents have no problem with boys playing sports with their daughters. Most women have no problem with transgenders in their personal space. Look at the survey polls. The majority of women are not concerned about it. You guys stoke fear, and this is why it's difficult for people to speak out about this. I respect your opinion, but honestly, it's kind of bigoted.
The conversation is over. Anywho, I find it strange that most women who support transgenders, those same type of women 20 years ago were calling those men creeps, perverts, pedophiles, serial killers, and such. Now somehow they're socially admired and defended. This seems more like a cultural trend that everyone is willing to compromise their integrity for. Oh, look at me, I'm woke, I'm inclusive. It doesn't make you special. It doesn't make you a humanitarian. It doesn't make you more intelligent. It's just a social script you're following for recognition. And on top of that, deciding to be a part of this inclusive groupthink culture, you've taken away your individualism, your independent thought, essentially your freedom. A group of 20 individuals were a part of an experiment involving shapes. The shape on the board was a rectangle, but the kicker was 19 people, when asked what shape was on the board, stated a circle. The last person, being the 20th, was pressured to answer like everyone else and decided to say a circle. Now, the 19 people were actors, of course, and the 20th person was not in on the prank, so to speak. But it goes to show that people are pressured to comply with the majority, even though they are blatantly wrong. These groupthink experiments study how people are willing to conform to a common belief, perspective, even though it's irrational and also immoral. So when you have a group of individuals saying that a male is a female, those who don't believe that have a moral quandary in either telling the truth and defending facts or going along to avoid tension and hostilities. But I'll give the wackos this. They have damn near perfected the art of stonewalling and gaslighting. Facts are staring them in the face, and it just bounces off them. That takes skill. It's actually impressive how determined they are to not look like raging lunatics.
Yeah, I must admit, it is impressive in a frightening way, though. Tim Walz can stand at a podium pretending to be a, quote, Midwest middle-class governor when he is the complete opposite of that general image. And I think there's something to his connections to China. Perhaps that's where the dictator-like governance came from in Minnesota. Take your children away from you if you don't do what we say. I mean, how can this person qualify for, why even ask the question? Convince, comply, and control. That's how a dictator rules over the people. First, you convince them, then you get them to comply. And this leads to control. And he's a coward ditching his men in battle? That's a form of treason in itself, because that's the same as if he was on the battlefield and sided with the enemy to save his fucking skin. Yeah, it's logical to suggest he is working as an undercover China operative, destroying America from within, and Democrats want to talk about Republicans' so-called ripping families apart? What do you call gaining custody of children from parents who won't identify Jimmy as Jessica? Oh, those families aren't ripped apart, hey? If Trump could just keep his head straight and talk to the American people in a more moderate tone, there is nothing Democrats could do, because the American people would see how he's matured over the last 8 years, and everything he has been saying about Democrats, or the liberals, would be more magnified. His advisors should tell him, instead of fighting fire with fire this time around, be the extinguisher. But Republican strategists have found a potential leak. It is speculated that Obama was behind picking Tim Walz, not Harris. And the reason he dumped him on Harris is because he wanted to expose this ticket as being entirely too radical. In other words, Obama wasn't a fan of Harris, he didn't initially endorse her, and after the debacle of Old Joe in the presidential debates, the Obama machine wanted a more moderate Democrat to be the candidate. Harris is not moderate whatsoever. So, Obama sought out someone even more radical than Harris to make her presidential ticket look ridiculous against the Trump ticket, obviously with the intentions of having Harris lose. And then sit back and tell the likes of Pelosi and Schumer, you see, Americans are sick and tired of that woke crap. We need more sophistication in our party. I agree with that theory, because this is clearly a blatant statement to the nation by this Democratic ticket. We're out of our minds and we don't care. This is the chaos sector.